The government of Colombia announced the suspension of bombing against illegal armed groups that are made up of minors. Two power units of the Zaporizhya nuclear plants were shut down after the shell by the Ukrainian forces. In China, Typhoon Ma-On made a landfall on Thursday in the southern province of Guangdong with winds of 119 kilometers per hour. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The government of Colombia announced the suspension of bombing against illegal armed groups that are made up of minors. The Minister of Defense, Iván Velázquez, announced this Thursday the end of bombing as a combat tool and the cessation of military operation against camps where there is certainty of the participation of underage recruits. Velázquez indicated that life should be privileged over death, pointing out that the recorded minors are also victims. Both critics and defenders of these measures agreed on the need to strengthen military intelligence, which will allow the adequate decisions to be made to persecute criminality and protect vulnerable populations. Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced a new extradition agreement proposal with the U.S. as he delivered a joint briefing with Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez. President Petro said narco-traffickers should abide to the negotiations with the Colombian government or otherwise will be extradited to the U.S. Those who had reached negotiation for a better judicial terms in their sentence but relapsing into drug trafficking will be extradited and will not be able to renegotiate their sentences with the U.S. government. The proposed agreement was discussed in a meeting with a top anti-narcotic U.S. delegation aimed at boosting efforts in giving opportunities for farmers and abandoning green coca leaves.
The first point has to do with extradition. To say briefly, what we proposed to them was that a narco-trafficker who does not accept negotiations with the government will be extradited to the U.S. A narco-trafficker who accepts negotiations with the government and falls into crime again will be extradited without any type of negotiations with the U.S. government. Now, a narco-trafficker who negotiates judicial benefits with the Colombian government and definitely stops being a narco-trafficker will not be extradited.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, criticized Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro for questioning the judiciary and electronic voting system ahead of October elections. The high UN official said the worst thing Bolsonaro has done was to ask his followers to protest against the judicial institutions on September the 7th, when Brazil celebrates 200 years of its independence, leading two parties to postpone demonstrations on the occasion and move them to the 10th to avoid clashes. Bachelet also highlighted that the president might disagree with the decision of other powers, but is obligated to respect them and state his own opinion in a respectful manner. The High Commissioner also expressed her concern about the increasing political violence in Brazil, persistent structural racism, and the loss of space for civil society action. The electronic voting system has been in operation in Brazil since the mid-90s.
But I think that President Bolsonaro has intensified his attacks on the judiciary and the electronic voting system, including during a meeting with ambassadors in July, which sparked strong reactions, as you know. And what I think is more concerning is that the president has called his supporters to protest against judicial institutions on 7th of September, the day of the 200 years anniversary of Brazil's independence.
There are less than 40 days left until Brazil's presidential elections, and tonight thousands of people across the country are preparing to hold watch parties for leading candidate Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, first interviewed on Globo TV Network's national news program in over a decade. In Recife, our correspondent Brian Meir has the details.
There's now less than 40 days until Brazil's 2022 presidential elections, and across the towns and cities of this massive nation of nearly 220 million people, candidates are out on the streets holding parades. People are standing at street corners with flags of the political parties and the voting number of their preferred candidates. And the largest television network in the country, Globo, which was founded by the military dictatorship in the 1960s as a means of social control, has started giving airtime to the top presidential candidates. On Monday night, they interviewed Jair Bolsonaro, the current incumbent, who's trailing in double digits in the polls to Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. It was the most watched television event of the year. 44 million people tuned in. And tonight, they're going to be interviewing Lula for the first time in 10 years. For the last 10 years, they've been throwing his name in the mud on a nearly daily basis. They cheerled for his political imprisonment. And all the time he was imprisoned, they never cast any doubt on the kangaroo court procedure that was illegally mounted against him with support from the United States Department of Justice. Now, as front-running candidate in this year's elections, they have to interview him. And across the nation, people are setting up big screen TVs outdoors to have outdoor viewing events to watch his first interview in this network in over 10 years, and is expected to have the best ratings of the year.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Numerous indigenous farmers and social organizations gathered in the city of La Paz, seat of the plurinational government of Bolivia, to participate in a march in support of the government and democracy. Representative of the Path of Unity and the Central Labor Union of Bolívar confirmed the arrival of the city of El Alto of numerous organizations that have traveled from different points of the national geography. This mobilization ratifies the popular reaction to demonstrations encouraged by those who in 2019 carried out a coup d'etat whose consequences is still felt and the country is still recovering from.
A message for all our native indigenous peoples, a message for our youth to always look for unity, to recover our economic stability, to recover the independence and sovereignty of all our peoples and our national state of Bolivia.
This Wednesday night, Alberto Fernandez, president of Argentina, appeared on television to support the innocence of Cristina Fernandez, accused by the prosecutor's office in the case known as Valida or Roadworks. The head of state, a legal expert, described the process as nonsense, marred by evidence legal weaknesses. The prosecutors in the case, Domingo Luciani, based his case on the premise that there was no way for her not to know that was going on. The president called that the crimes of which Cristina Fernandez is accused requires malice, that is, the certainty that a cause must have wanted to commit them.
In this case, Cristina is not guilty of anything. I have no doubt. I have commented with her who is going to want to be president of Argentina next, if that person is going to be responsible for everything that happens under that government. At this moment, I have more than 100,000 people depending on me. What I say is that Cristina Kirchner did not commit any of the crimes that are attributed to her.
In Spain, the T-shirt worn by Diego Maradona in the final of Mexico 1986 World Cup will be handed over to Argentina after 36 years and will remain in the Legends Museum to be inaugurated in February 2023. The symbolic handover ceremony will be led by German former player Lothar Matthäus, one of the stars of the finalist German team that received the piece from Maradona himself. In addition, the ceremony will be attended by Marcelo Ordaz, president of Legends. Matthäus had owned jerseys since June 29, 1986, and will hand it over to the collectors in a ceremony held in the Argentine city in Spain and presided over by the ambassador Ricardo Alfonsini. Victor Hugo Morales will conduct the event, which will also be attended by the president of the AFA, Claudio Tapia, Oscar Mayo, executive general manager of the Legend, partner of the Legends project, as well as the specialist press that will cover the event. Mark Wells, U.S. Deputy Assistant for Brazil and the Southern Hemisphere, arrived in Paraguay this Wednesday and held a meeting with several legislators of the South American nation. Wells met with lawmakers to address the complex situation between Washington and Asunción after the United States sanctioned former President Horacio Cartes and the last Vice President Hugo Velázquez for being significantly corrupt. Drug trafficking, corruption, and potential cooperation projects topped the agenda. The official warned that other measures were on the way. Upon leaving the meeting, Senator Jorge Caray said that they talk about a institutional way.
We talked about the issue of money laundering. We talked about drug trafficking as well. We talked about the drug routes, the institutional fragility, and also their position with respect to these points, asking them basically about the money circuits, the drug trafficking circuits, and that of contraband.
And we have more news coming up after this final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Two power units of the Zaporizhya nuclear power plant were shut down after stolen by the Ukrainian forces. Authorities report that a grid disconnection is a result of an automation failure caused by a fire near the high voltage line in the city of Energoda. They then noted that the work is underway to bring all phases back online. At the moment, power supplies has been restored to all towns and districts of the Zaporizhya region. Officials also said that the plant is under the security of Russian forces as part of the special military operation in the Donbass. Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a decree on Thursday to increase the number of army troops by 130,000 to a total of 1.15 million aims at Moscow's special military operation in Ukraine. The decree will take effect as of January 1st, 2023, and the ranks increase will rely heavily on volunteers instead of draftees. The Kremlin has said that only volunteers contract soldiers take part in the special military operation in Ukraine, rejecting claims that it was pondering a mobilization. As one Russian military analyst put in, given the complexity of the military equipment requiring at least 3 years of training, a draft will not help. The Spanish Congress has validated a decree law of energy saving plan to alleviate the economic consequences derived from the conflict in Ukraine. The legal measure that had support of the parties that backed the presidential investiture of Pedro Sanchez and the advanced stances of Popular Party and the far-right backs. The final result was 187 voters in favor, 161 against, and 1 abstention, thus reaching a simple majority. Finally, the decree will be presented as a bill which will offer the possibility to the parliamentary forces to incorporate other initiatives or introduce announces with those already taken. As regards energy saving, the decree includes a restriction on the thermostat temperatures in administrative buildings, stored cultural spaces, restaurants, stations, and airports. In China, Typhoon Ma-On made landfall on Thursday in the southern province of Guangdong with winds of 118 kilometers per hour. The 19th event of this type so far this year is causing strong storms, winds and rainfall, as well as flooding of many roads, leaving some 104 people in temporary shelters. A local weather station reported waves of up to 5-meter height, forcing authorities to call some of the 300 fishing boats to ports as preventive measures. The effects of Ma-On's path were severe in the Hankan administrative region, where commercial and financial activity was partially suspended. 6 counties in Henan province are expected to record rainfall more than 100 millimeters in the next 24 hours. Provincial authorities in China have continued to take effective drought relief measures, including improving irrigation system and conducting cloud seeding to ensure safe drinking water and irrigation for the Assam grain crops. Since the drought began in July 20, authorities have discharged nearly 280 million cubic meters of water to the country's largest irrigation area in Sichuan in an effort to ensure the autumn rice production. To alleviate the local drought, the Sichuan Meteorological Administration deployed 2 large unmanned aerial vehicles to conduct a close-in operation. The country's National Observatory continued to issue an orange alert for high temperatures as heat waves affected many regions of the Asian nation. Hundreds of households living on the outskirts of the Afghan capital, Kabul, have been suffering from acute water shortages for years, with a persistent drought and poverty now making people's lives harder. In the town of Miyash, about 500 homes near a mountain have to source their water from one well every day. Families have to carry multiple tanks of water from down to the mountain to meet their family's water needs. According to local officials, this difficult situation has been going on at least 3 years. Members of the Afghan Christian Society said the organization is planning to take measures to provide filtered water to Kabul.
There was water supply to each household until the private company stopped doing business 3 years ago. Now people have to come to this well or other places for water. People complain about droughts and poverty. Some families left because of water and security issues.
teleSUR English continues to grow. Listening now reaches Europe, and you can order it from a cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place July 1st, and quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signal in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us, and our stories are being heard all around the globe. This is multi-platform will continue providing trustful content to oppose the Japanese media's narrative on our faithfulness to our audience. And with that story, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. And now you can also follow us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. For teleSUR English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.